welcome to Conversations with CardFlight. I'm Derek Webster, and joining me today is Scott Talbott, the Senior Vice President of Government Relations at the Electronic Transactions Association. Welcome, Scott.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Excellent. So why don't we start with, if you don't mind just introducing kind of what the ETA is as an association, and then kind of what you do in your role on the government relations side.
Sure. The Electronic Transactions Association is a trade association that's based in D.C., and we represent over 500 members companies who participate and make the payments industry happen. So it's everything from point-of-sale terminals to banks to processors to networks, the whole soup to nuts, really, on making $21 trillion in credit card, debit card transactions happen around the world. My role there, Derek, is to represent the members before policymakers at a federal, state, and international level. I work with Congress, I work with regulators, we work with the courts, and our goal is to advance good public policy that helps the economy and helps ETA member companies serve their customers. So we look to shape good public policy to help strengthen the economy and our role in it.
So obviously that's a very important mission for all of us in the industry. Could you share more about how you do the work? Like, what's a typical day like for you and your team?
Well, that's one of the things I enjoy about this job is there's no sort of typical day. One phone call, one email, one headline, and one coronavirus, and the whole thing changes. And that's somewhat exciting. But generally what my role is to work with, or a typical process is I'll work with our member companies. We'll figure out what priorities are important to them, what legislative or regulatory priorities are important to them. We will gather and develop talking points based on the experts at our member companies, experts such as yourself, and we will then work with policymakers, both Congress and regulators, again in Washington and state capitals and in foreign countries, and talk to those policymakers to advance the interests. So it's part education, part advocacy, explaining how our industry works, with an eye towards shaping the policy that will, again, help our member companies serve their customers, help consumers use their cards to achieve their goals, which ultimately helps both the consumer, merchants, as well as the economy.
And how did you get your start? What led you to this? Did you, in elementary school, did you decide you want to be a lobbyist when you grew up?
That's right. Well, I don't think anyone dreams of becoming a lobbyist. Maybe in Washington you might find one or two. But the reality is there's two ways to become a lobbyist. One is to know the process, and you gain that by working on the Hill for a member of Congress. The other is to be a subject matter expert, and I chose the latter route. I am a CPA, and so I know taxes. I was working for a company, a trade association, doing the books, and they said, "Oh, you know taxes, Scott. Why don't you go up on the Hill and talk to the Senate Finance Committee about," I forget whatever the issue was, and thus my lobbying career was born. And from there, I've been doing it for
the rest
26 years. Yeah, exactly.
So what are some of the current issues that you and your team are actively working on right now?
Yeah, so the biggest one is privacy. Privacy is a very important issue. It's a kitchen table issue. Consumers are very focused on how companies use their data. And so policymakers, predictably, are taking notice and drafting legislation that will change the rules about what rights consumers have over the data that they have given to companies, and what companies must do to protect that data, and what they can and cannot do with that data. So these rules are very important. They will shape and affect products and services that are offered, features that are offered or not offered, and so it's important for policymakers to get those rules right so that we can achieve the dual goals of protecting consumers' information, protecting their privacy, while still allowing consumers to receive the products and services that they want and need, and encouraging the industry to continue to innovate around products. So that's probably the biggest issue. That is the biggest issue that's facing policymakers now.
Now, working with an association like ETA that has 500 different member companies, I imagine there's times where you have competing constituent groups and competing interests. How do you balance and navigate that?
So the good news is our member companies are all focused on making payments happen. And that guiding goal breaks down into a couple other sub-goals. One is security of the payments industry, as well as innovation. So everyone's sort of pulling in those same directions, which is helpful. But we do have conflicts sometimes between companies, sometimes within a company. Two different divisions will take differing positions. And our approach is to sit down in a room, have a conversation, get on the phone or fly, face-to-face, and work through the issue and develop a consensus. Because if we can't develop an answer, if we are conflicted out of participating in the issue, then that means we're going to leave others on the field to decide that issue. Other forces other interests will shape that issue, and that's not a good result. So it's important for us as an industry to continue to be united as we think about policy matters so that we get the good result, the best result.
So a lot of member companies, a lot of employees at member companies, a lot of viewers of Conversations with CardFlight may not be familiar with kind of how policy is made and how laws are made. What sort of calls to action would you have of them, and what should our viewers be doing to shape government policy?
Sure. So politics is not a spectator sport. You must be involved, and that sounds daunting at first as big important people up in Washington. But you know what? They're just regular people like you and I. Their job is to serve you. It's to serve us, to serve the employees of CardFlight and the employees of ETA members. You all are experts in your field. You know far more about the payments industry than the vast majority of members of Congress. They are actually looking to you as experts to help them navigate through this modern payments world. And the role of ETA, and mine in particular, is to help shape that, to bring together experts such as employees of ETA member companies, executives of ETA member companies, with policymakers. In terms of the process, it is very open and very straightforward. Anybody can get a meeting with a member of Congress. The hearings, the markups, all the proceedings are public. They're available on the internet, and you can be there in person. What ETA does to help make all of this happen is we have action alerts that we'll send out, encouraging you to contact a member of Congress. We'll put talking points or suggested talking points on a particular issue to make it easy for you. We hold fly-ins in both state as well as Washington, D.C., and we encourage you to participate in those to allow your voice to be heard. You have a role, you have a duty, a constitutional duty, and a constitutional right to petition your government to help shape public policy. And if you're sitting back there and saying, oh, well, all my other ETA member companies, somebody will do this, the answer is you must do it, because if you do not, I guarantee you that opponents of whatever position that we are taking are up there working hard to shape the opposite side and push for policies that may not benefit us or may actually harm us. So it is very important for you, everyone, I encourage everyone to step up and be involved in the process.
So we talked about earlier, your kind of position as a subject matter expert on issues pertaining to our industry. So one final question would be, if you could wave a magic wand and change anything about our industry, what would you change and why?
Yeah, so I think first would be to encourage everyone to get involved. It's not hard. You can tweet, you can email, you can text, you can phone call, all these methods to communicate with your members of Congress. And then secondly would be that our industry, for better or for worse, is very complex. And explaining that sometimes to policymakers who are not experts in payments has its challenges and takes some time. So if we could simplify the whole industry, that would be fantastic. But for as wonderful as the payments industry is, that would be one sort of tweak.
It's like a really big magic wand.
Yeah,
there's a lot of complexity we got to pull back. Excellent. Well, Scott Talbott, Senior Vice President of Government Affairs at the ETA, thank you very much for being with us today.
Sure. Thanks, Derek.
And thank you for watching Conversations with CardFlight. For more great conversations like this, be sure to check us out at cardflight.com, CardFlight's YouTube channel, or any other major social media network. Thank you.